I have been looking rough for days now because we are in the midst of ascension symptoms over here, and between eclipses, and yeah, there's a lot going on. But I needed to pause my personal introspective time this morning after waking up to capture this essence and this pattern of thought that keeps coming through for me and in the resources that I'm finding here. I've been just marked myself. I've been getting a lot out of this book. Amazing read, but I've been going through it very slowly since December, and I've been kind of just like randomly flipping to different pages depending on the day. 111. And today was interesting because I had my own little personal piece that came through, and then a collective piece came through as well. And this one was really powerful. It's a very powerful concept that is also potentially very triggering because of the complexity of truth that it holds. And I found myself going through my own struggle internally and externally with this concept just in the last couple of weeks here. But I just want to read this passage first. The problem is that, let me start here actually. When one person uses a position of power to control the behavior of another, people will always rebel against subjugation and fight to reclaim their free will, because our very nature itself is freedom. We will always strive for it, even when our vision is clouded by the fog. The problem is that if a group of people fights for freedom without clearing their own fog first, that is, their domestication and attachments, these same people who gain freedom from an oppressor will eventually replace the previous set of conditions with their own, and in turn try to subjugate the people around them in order to establish their vision of peace and harmony. This cycle of imposition and subjugation has been occurring in the dream of the planet for thousands of years. This is how wars begin, end, and start again. And this is true no matter if it's a brawl on the street or an international conflict, as both stem from one party's desire to subjugate the other based on the subjugator's belief that their way is the right way. This is the cycle that conditional love always produces. A very powerful concept. And the reason it's difficult, and the reason I'm bringing it to light here for the masses this morning, is because I have been witnessing and observing something in the spiritual communities just through social media for the last several months, and the last several weeks especially. There has been a lot with the eclipses of people realizing the people around them and the connections that they've had that have previously been very fulfilling are coming to an end. And it's because there's this feeling of power, control, dominion still being perpetuated even amongst the spiritual communities. And a lot of people are talking out about this, and a lot of people are sharing their own experiences. And I find myself turned off for a couple of different reasons, by realizing that it's very apparent and prevalent in these spiritual communities, which we've known for a long time, but also some of the people that are speaking out about these experiences are continuing to perpetuate the same cycle that they're recognizing in others themselves, and are removing themselves from these situations, but don't realize that they're still carrying the distortions of what they're recognizing 444. They don't realize that they're still carrying the same frequencies and the same distortions that they've just removed themselves from, and that they will continue to perpetuate those cycles as well. 455. because they're still coming from, as was stated in the book here, this fogginess, they're going with the liberated side of their natural inclination to strive for freedom, and to be able to tell when they're being when there's power play at hand of any sort, and we pick up on that energetically very quickly, whether we're spiritually awake or not. It's easier when you're spiritually awake to recognize that. But even if you're in your process of spiritually awakening, that doesn't mean that you are a clear channel in all forms, in all ways yet. And it doesn't mean that you don't have the capacity to go in and out of that clear channel frequency, depending on the experiences, or the lessons, or the tests and the trials that you're experiencing during your process. It's a continual refinement process, and it's something that's important to ask yourself as you're noticing the energy with which you are talking about the people. This is what I find myself noticing the most, is I find myself feeling very compassionate and understanding, and also almost like this rise of indignation when I hear these individuals talking about situations that they've just left, and obviously the strong feelings that go along with that. I find myself matching that energy for a moment as I listen with an open heart to their message and what their experience has been. And then I seem to find myself simultaneously repulsed by the end of their message, as I feel the same energy that they're describing about these other people coming from them as well. And I don't think it's recognized. And this is why it is called to my attention to bring this to awareness this morning, today, because it's such a sneaky and subtle distortion that can make a massive impact, far beyond, it's a subtle continuing to feed the ego, and to feed parts of ourselves that want to be right. And that will translate to bigger things further down the road, is my feeling there, because it's that mindset and that strong emotion continues to cloud judgment. It continues to cloud a person's judgment when they have not anchored those feelings through their own awareness, to the point where they can see, how do I want to say this here? It's something that I'm still working through myself, because I find myself struggling with the exact same thing with a particular individual in my space and in my life right now. I find myself going into this energy of that my way is right, and that my perspective is accurate and correct, because I've put in the work to become more spiritually awake. And that's the sneaky part. That's the sneaky part that can technically be true, but the energy of portraying that and enforcing that on another individual is what distorts it. I'm going to try to say that again, because I think that's where the key is. The fogginess that comes from the strong emotions that arise when we feel a sense of indignation, when we feel a sense of needing to defend ourselves, or needing to control an outcome in any way, shape, or form, that is the distortive piece. If we are trying to enforce our will because we think that it's the better way, the right way, or the correct way, it is simultaneously, it can be true that there is truth. The nuance here is incredibly tricky. This is not one where every situation just falls to one way or the other. This one is very, very key to use your discernment with, to tap in with yourself. And when you are interacting with other people and observing this pattern occurring, it's a very common pattern, but it's one that needs an incredible amount of discernment. Otherwise, you can find yourself just judging even your own actions too harshly, to the point where you're not acting or speaking up anymore or coming from a place. And that's really why it's tricky here. The throat chakra is obviously coming up for just the amount of pressure that can put to this area to be clouded one way or the other, either by the sense of needing to be right, or the sense of and calling the people that you've just left behind, calling them wrong or evil or under. I think that's the energy that is coming through the most for me, that feels distorted, is this idea that the people that you're leaving behind, when you feel called to move on, when you feel that you are being called into a different energy, a higher frequency, whatever it is, when you've recognized something about the field that isn't clear, or that is affecting your own energy, and you know that you need to move forward without those other energies and possibly entities attached, then there comes the key of how you discuss those feelings and how you view those people and those individuals later. Are you viewing them as the enemy, or are you viewing the energies attached to them as the enemy? Because there's a big difference there. And being able to truly recognize that someone is coming from a place of distortion, calling it for what it is within yourself and possibly outwardly as well, so that awareness can be spread, but doing it without it's not without anger, it's not without rage, because emotions are very healthy and beneficial, but it's with this specific caustic element of it goes back to the binary thinking, and it's seeing these individuals as complete darkness, or as out to get everyone, when in reality they may very well be in need of recognition and awareness, expansion of what they're the effect that they're having on people, but also that it may not be intentional. Tricky, because we see adults as intentional no matter what. We see adults as individuals who can, should, and ought to have it all together. Especially if they've done any sort of process when it comes to spiritually awakening. We automatically hold them at a higher expectation level and threshold, and that mindset triggers this conditional love, where we wouldn't feel that towards an animal or towards a child the same way that we do for an adult. And that's a key difference here, is like not recognizing that someone who's in their journey, and just because you've been called to remove yourself from that energy and maybe ascend to a different frequency, a true ascension in all realms, because it's a grounded, there's a balance of a I want to say actually more like there's a well-rounded way to ascend, and there's a way to ascend in one area and not the other, which causes a massive distortion in the long run, because you can recognize something as being distorted in another field, ascend out of that frequency, remove yourself from that frequency, and unknowingly, unwittingly bring that same frequency and energy with you in another category, in another area of your life and of your mental frequency and perspective. And it's the subtle, tricky version of, oh my goodness, I did it. I recognized where I was at. I recognized that this frequency was distorted. I recognized that this was off. And now I'm better. I'm higher for it. And that's an ego play, right? Like we want to, and then I've seen a lot of these individuals gain a serious following, which I'm sure continues to validate the feeling that they're right, because other people are agreeing with them that they've had so many of the same experiences. And I found myself, I was literally typing out a comment to one of these individuals just the other day and agreeing with her how I had had the same experience over a year ago at a retreat space and at an event where I could feel this distortion very strongly and was very concerned with how these individuals were affecting people that were coming through in this like very vulnerable healing space, and unknowingly charging the container with this very unhealthy frequency that is more perpetuating just the same thing that they're claiming to leave behind. And it's usually, the key to tell is there's usually some form of bitterness towards a previous thing. Like this group, these individuals who are leading this space left a group that was similar, and now they are bitter towards these individuals or toward this group. And that is a key difference.